listen, we all know Martin O'Neill is a fantastic manager. I mean, in terms of the word manager rather than a coach. But what does it say about Celtic in terms of their plan for the future? I mean, they're probably going to be handing out, we need to sign 12, 13 players. They're going to make them 3 or 4 year contracts. We saw it happen under Ange Postecoglou, and those guys pretty much carry Celtic for the next 4 years. So this next batch of signings are going to be the ones that are potentially going to be the ones that are sold on for big money or creating the next group for Celtic to compete for trophies and in Europe. So you're putting that in charge of Martin O'Neill, who's admitting himself he's been out the game. He was at the game for 6 years in a brief club spell. Even then, before that, was another 6-7 years as an Ireland manager. So he's nearly 15 years away from being a club manager for any period of time in terms of building. So he's going to need help. And at the moment, where is this help? I mean, you touched on it there, Youngie, about the coaching staff. Obviously, the talk is there's a kind of stumbling block about Shaun Maloney and Mark Fotheringham coming back in. I can understand the reason why that's taken a bit of time, because it's not that straightforward. I think Celtic fans think they were part of the success, a big part of the success last season, getting out of the fire, give them the job, give them what they want, give them the job. But it's not quite as clear cut as that. I mean, Maloney's got a job at Celtic. He's got to renegotiate his terms and offer to take that job as a coach, and then step away from a kind of safe job into a kind of maybe a bit more volatile position. As there was talk of him being a head of football operations, which would have been a different kind of job, which I think he was heavily touted for. So that's complicated. Mark Fotheringham as well, from what I can gather, I know the big headlines are obviously pay cuts, and that's and offered less wages. I think maybe fairly true. I think, but then again, I think he's brought in as an emergency backup last season. He'd have got a higher premium. If you can imagine a contractor coming in to help somebody out, rescue a job, you may not get the same money as a staff member as you do as a contractor. That's just the way the business. If you're going to be number 3 coach, you might not get that same money with Martin and Shaun want you in that door to help you out. So that's complicated, and I understand why Fotheringham would want to get to be staying in the same kind of money, but it maybe not be possible. But what I would ask is, what does Martin need Maloney and Fotheringham, or is that another issue that I think needs to be addressed? Because we know there was conflict in that managerial coaching department about how Celtic played. I mean, they all admit it that Shaun Maloney and Fozzie's vision wasn't the same as Martin O'Neill's. Who won that battle in the end? I think perhaps the Maloney-Fozzie dynamic changed the way they played, back-ticking away they played before. But this is a team that's going to have to change its way it's playing to suit Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill's now the manager. He'll be calling the shots. So does he need Maloney and Fotheringham, or does it want to go a different direction? Or how do you see it, Swanee?
It's an interesting dynamic the way you've put that, Michael. When you were saying that, who eventually seemed to win it, and the fact that Celtic emerged from the season with the 2 trophies that they had to go for when the management team came back in would tell you that it worked, and it would tell you that Martin would probably want that again. So I don't know. I take your point about Martin maybe want to do it his way, but Martin's clearly open to the fact that that might not always be the way forward, or that might not be the way that is suitable to the squad. And that comes back to your point. It's a massive question about what happens with the recruitment. Then does Martin?
Can you appoint a manager? Can you appoint a manager and then not play the way he wants to play?
Well, Celtic can.
But how
Listen, you made the point, Michael, quite rightly, round about springtime, when there was discussions about who might get the manager's job. We both spoke about it when Jens Bertolascu's name was kicking about, and you made the point that you can't put a coach in there at the moment because the structure in behind is not there. The structure in behind still isn't there. That's why I think Martin's the manager, because it's almost like the sticking plaster, the safer. Martin needs to hold the fort again for another year while they desperately try and sort out the mess that's in behind, all the appointments that should have been made that haven't been made yet. And now he's going to have to oversee it while all that's going on in the background. So I can see a status quo where Martin's there as the figurehead. Martin's there as the figurehead. Martin's the guy that can tell fans off for having a pop at the board and nobody comes back at him, and a brilliant motivator of players. I can see that working again. I can actually see it working. I know your point about you can't appoint a manager and not play his way. I think in this situation that could happen because it is only for a year. I think they might just go down the same path again that they did in the last 4 or 5 months of the season.
Well, clearly, I think that's what they are doing, but I just think
that is what they're doing. That is what they're doing because they haven't sorted out what's happening in the background, Michael. They haven't sorted it out. They've had ages to sort it out since Paul Tisdale left, and it's not been sorted. So Martin's going to have to hold the fort again. Well, you know, and glide along the top of the water while the feet are thrashing underneath as they try and sort it out. But evidence tells you, as it, you could be sitting here this time next year having the same conversation.
But Martin did say many times towards the end of that season that we're talking about styles of play. He was getting questioned for a period of time. The football was pretty brutal, and it didn't look confused what they were doing in the park. I mean, it did look as though they were caught between different styles. But Martin did say several times it's different. If I had a full pre-season to implement my own style, it would be different. Well, now he's going to get a full pre-season. I just can't see how he's going to acquiesce to having coaches having more say in terms of tactics and setup, and just being the guy who motivates the troops and talks to the press. Because a manager, and they are big parts of being a manager, but also setting the standard and nailing down the way a team plays is also a big part of a manager. So I think he might want to put his own stamp on it now.
The summer recruitment, Michael, if it ever happens.
Who's running the summer recruitment?
Well, there we go. We go back to a point again that it's a sticking plaster while everything else in the background's a mess.
And with Martin O'Neill as well, one thing that's always been, he's always relied on his coaches. That's been a massive part. You know how the old school Brian Clough way, show up on a Friday. Coaching matters to Martin O'Neill than most managers anyway, and he obviously had something with Maloney and Fotheringham. Maybe, I think the point you made, Dermot, was fascinating about how just about his own vision, and like obviously Maloney and Fotheringham had their own view and things as well, how it would run. But I think O'Neill's, it has to be good around O'Neill, and it always was with Steve Walford, John Robertson. He had a great coaching team that he trusted, and they seemed to have that last season. But it has to be right, because obviously what you do more, but as you say about his magic touch, and like his kind of inspirational quotes, great with the media, is very important. But the coaching has to be right. Like that's, you could feel that as well. Like last season, like when it wasn't, it was a massive problem. So
this is what I'm talking about, the short-termism. So they're going to hand out 3 and 4 year contracts to half a dozen big hitting first team signings that are going to fit perhaps a Martin O'Neill team. But what if Martin thinks after another year he's 75 and thinks, you know what, I'm pretty knackered, I'm going to step aside. Could have won the title. But listen, Swanee, you're right. There's every chance that he could go and do it again. But he steps aside, and the next man is going to have a Martin O'Neill team to come into. Yeah. And if you get a Jens Berthel-Askew or whoever, I mean, the kind of up-and-coming trendy coach in the Bundesliga, he may not want that kind of team. I mean, Ange Postecoglou left a team that was perfectly suited for a Brendan Rodgers. That's not what suited Martin O'Neill. So what's going to happen down the line? I just think it's, I just, again, it's back to what you're saying about answers. Celtic are a complete puzzle right now. What direction do they want to go in? What do they want to do? I mean, they're taking kind of short-term solutions, which I understand because they're fairly safe short-term solutions. But what does it mean for the long term? What is it? What is the vision for the next couple of years? It's hard to see it. It looks muddled to me.
Celtic have become absolute masters of kicking a can down the road.
Yeah.
Last season doing it. Even with the recruitment stuff, just bringing in loans, kick the can down the road again just to get through it. When everybody knew that January required major surgery with the squad, there was nothing really done, and it just ended up a succession of loans. Kick the can down the road again, kick it down the nuts. But I feel like it's been kicked down the road again.
Yeah, I just think the club does need modernise. Really, I mean, again,
supporters have been saying that for years.
Yeah, I mean, Dermot doesn't pick managers, and that's fine when you bring in these big hitters. But at some point, you need to have some sort of longer term plan in place.